Hello, my wonderful, wonderful Ashwings. It is such a pleasure to see you all here today for this video. We are talking a little bit about Silver Age, or what was once Project Blue. Now, with Silver Age, one of the newer formats to come into the Flesh and Blood TCG scene, I did want to have a discussion that I'm pretty sure I may have covered on a previous video in regards to what we may expect to see happen with this new format. Now, Flesh and Blood has had young hero formats for a really long time. Notably, the two most, well, really, I guess they're not popular, but Blitz being the most popular young hero format. And then you also have Commoner and UPF. So 3 formats, theoretically, that have utilized the young heroes. This has been that way for a really long time, and notably, Commoner has been the premier budget format for Flesh and Blood for quite a while. I think ever since like Tales of Aria or Monarch, I think is when it was first introduced. With the coming of Silver Age, or Sage, as a lot of people are calling it here, and I also quite enjoy the name, Sage is utilizing the same kind of budget style of deck building, much like Commoner is, in which you have commons to build from your decks, but you also have rares that you can add into your decks as well. Now, rares aren't exactly rare. They are also notably more bulk cards that you can find pretty easily at your LGS's bulk bin. But in the scenario, you get to build your deck with a little bit more power. Something that I have often said is that a lot of power from these core decks, you know, the reason that a lot of these engines work as they do in Classic Constructed is because of the rares and commons in their card pool. And with that being the case, you do see that in Commoner, you lose a little bit of that value and a little bit of that power by removing the rares. And that's not a bad thing, because you can still have pretty powerful turns in Commoner. I mean, I've been hit for 30 damage in a turn in a Commoner format, so it can very well happen. But the overall core strategy changes when you go from Commoner to Project Blue or Silver Age. With Commoner, a lot of things boil down to 2 things. You have go wide or go tall, right? And go tall also can effectively kind of be a fatigue-esque strategy, but both of them in that scenario is go wide to try and overpower your opponent's defenses and leak enough damage to where you're constantly sending threats every single turn to kill them, or go tall, in which you really only need to keep 2 cards, maybe even 1 card in your hand to effectively send damage at your opponent at a larger rate. That's usually over the amount that they can block without giving their entire hand. So in doing so, you do see a lot of change when you add in the rares. When you add in the rares, you get to obviously go ahead and talk a little bit about like the core strategy, right? I always tend to bring up Vincent because the RuneGate cards that you have access to in common are not really core to her engine. Whereas if you add in the rares, you get access to things like Deathly Whale. And Deathly Whale allows you to quite literally make more rune chants. You get access to other rares like Mauvrin Skies and other rares that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But effectively, it allows you to get more rune chant generation going through. It allows you to really build up the power of that deck. And it gives it a space to be played in, right? Notably, though, of course, Project Blue or Silver Age does have a different ban list compared to Commoner, so you do see a lot of stuff in Silver Age being banned. But you also can compare it to Blitz, right? Silver Age still uses a lot of that budget level stuff, but with the rares and commons, you still have quite a bit of power, especially in a 20 health format. With that being the case, you take a look at Blitz, where most games, if you're lucky, last past turn 3. And the reason being is just you have so many powerful Majestics and Legendaries, and you have armor that blocks really well, and so your aggro opponent can really send like 20 damage a turn several times in a row because of the amount of armor that they have available to them in their equipment. So those games tend to end pretty quick, but it still has the same power as Classic Constructed, just with half the health. In this scenario, for Silver Age, you don't have to worry about still buying any of those really expensive Majestics or even the legendaries for your hero, because guess what? It's all rares and commons. So you do get a wonderful, spread of different heroes to build for about like $20 a deck. Whereas if you needed to buy the legendaries and the Majestics for your Blitz deck, that would cost you quite a bit. It tends to cost right around, I would imagine, like 2/3 of what a classic constructed deck would cost, because it's got one card less than your classic constructed build. So that's kind of the difference in regards to why, where Silver Age sits in between Commoner and Blitz. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit further is Silver Age going to replace either of these formats? Most notably in the recent trailer that they made for Flesh and Blood, talking about the Silver Age Battle Hardened that are happening towards the end of 2025, with also the announcement that more information on this format is going to come in October, which is just a couple weeks away. So what we have a lot of thought about is I've heard from several different communities in several different aspects, whether it be Blitz or it be Commoner, whatever it might be, that Silver Age is going to be replacing one, if not both, of the other formats, being Blitz or Commoner. Especially with looking at that trailer does showcase Prism Advent of Thrones as a showcase hero for Silver Age, which is interesting because initially with Project Blue, you were only able to play rarity heroes and below. So rare, common, and token heroes. Prism Advent of Thrones is a Majestic. So unless she's going to get a down rating, and her Figments are also going to get a down rating to rare, it is very much so a possibility that we could be seeing Majestic heroes in Silver Age, which is fine, right? But notably, as somebody, I do oftentimes think about it, because with me being on the Clash committee, talking about a fan-made format that utilizes rares and commons in a deck and also has any rarity heroes, having that identity for that hero is pretty core and important to the system. And so if we see Prism Advent of Thrones get introduced in Silver Age, but is either, if she's able to use her Figments, it's going to be a specialization specifically for her, or she's not going to be able to use her Figments at all, and there's no point in running her. But that's all speculation, right? We don't know anything about Silver Age just yet, outside of the fact of what we know from Project Blue. But with Silver Age, is it going to replace Blitz or Commoner, or both, right? Are both formats going to be erased, and this is going to be the only format that they're going to start working on? Now, notably, I don't think that they are going to get rid of Blitz, right? If any of these formats are not leaving, it is not Blitz. Blitz is not leaving, or I guess it is Blitz. Blitz is not leaving, right? That's effectively what I'm trying to say here. Blitz is not going to go. Blitz is a very popular format in a lot of different other countries. It's not super popular here in the States, but a lot of countries, they don't end up having the luxury of spending, 4 to 6 hours at an LGS for a big event, like a ProQuest, or not a ProQuest, but a skirmish, or even their armories, right? They don't have a lot of time to be able to just sit there and go, okay, cool, I'm going to spend 3 to 4 to 5 hours of my day playing Flesh and Blood. They have other things they need to do. Like it's just a different environment entirely. And with that being the case, Blitz ends up being the most premier format in those situations, because you could go to an armory in the morning on a Saturday and go jam out a Blitz armory real quick, and then be done before like 2:00, and then get ready to go to maybe another Blitz armory in the afternoon. If you're really trying to like grind out armory things, like grind out gem packs or stuff, or just enjoy the game on a weekend, that's fine. The games are really fast, and notably, a lot of the cards that people already have for Blitz will allow them to transfer those cards into Classic Constructed, should they wish to go ahead and play that format too. So there's a nice correlation between CC and Blitz because it's the same rarities all around. The only difference is you run 2 copies of a card in a deck in Blitz as opposed to 3 copies of a card in CC. So where does that leave me? Is Silver Age going to be replacing Commoner? Now, Commoner notably has had quite a bit of an issue as of probably the last three years, in which really, as long as you can consistently put out the best math when in your deck, you are going to win all of your games. And the hero that does that the most is Ira. Ira has been at the top of the leaderboard for Commoner since I have begun playing Flesh and Blood back in like the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. And let me tell you, it is still just as oppressive. You know, they banned the Zephyr Needle from the format because they expected Ira to be utilizing retrieve abilities to get the Zephyr Needle back. And frankly, that's not where the power was. Yeah, sure, right? You're removing her ability for her ceiling to get higher, but overall, Ira is just truly the best all good cards deck. You get to play all the good ninja cards that have Go Again. You get to play all the good generic cards that have powerful on hits. You get to have all the generic good math in which you pay 2 to come in for 7 because of Ira's ability. You're usually playing it at second. So with a lot of breakpoints being presented throughout the course of the game, it is really easy for Ira to whittle down her opponent and then send a large combo towards the end of her game to really just blow you out of the water. And that is very, very frequent in the game of Flesh and Blood for the Commoner format. Ira has always been a menace, and notably, they just recently banned a whole bunch of weapons from the format. Those weapons being Rosetta Thorn, Waning Moon, Zephyr Needle, and Reality Refractor. Those four weapons right there did a lot to what would have been theoretically the variety of heroes that you could play in the Commoner series. And now that those are gone, Ira has she's won in such a way that it's hard to stop her, right? Because Ira is not going to ever stop having that math value of the +1 on your second attack. More notably, she gets access to Kodachis, which I believe to be the best 2 weapons in the entirety of the Commoner format. Let alone any young health format. Really, I guess any format. I think having double Kodachi is insane because it does put you in that position when you're below 5 life. How much are you willing to take, right? So with that being the case, do I think that Silver Age is due to replace Commoner? Do I hope it does? No. Right? I don't hope it does. I do feel like there are people out there who enjoy Commoner much more than they would something like Project Blue. Project Blue does have a pretty intense ban list. And if that ban list is staying the same way moving into Silver Age, it is going to be a very interesting way to go about keeping a varied amount of different heroes to be viable for the format. But overall, I think that if there is a format that Project Blue or Silver Age is going to replace, it's going to be Commoner. And the reason being is because I don't think that when they think about side events at other formats or other big events, I don't think their plan is to have 2 gold foil events, one for Silver Age and one for Commoner. I think truly something that would just allow them to make it as easy of a transition as possible is just to add the rares into the Commoner pool and then have that new ban list. It will prevent them from having to make a whole new ban list for them to have to monitor and check. It'll remove a budget format and replace it with another budget format, so it's pretty much a 1-to-1. And the deck building gets significantly better adding in a pool of rares to the deck, to the format. So if it is going to replace anything, it's going to replace Commoner. Now, notably, do I want that to happen? No. I think that there are people out there who enjoy Commoner a lot, but if it does happen, frankly, I'm not going to care that much. It's another budget format. Frankly, it's what I like. It's the reason why I play Clash every now and again. It's the reason why I joined the Clash committee, is because I enjoyed that concept of a budget format a lot better than I did Commoner, which was just, if you didn't play Ira or Icelander, you were never going to make top 8 in anything ever at all. And that was the overall thought process I have with Commoner. There's no real way to change how Commoner is functioning as a format outside of having something like a Living Legend system. And frankly, I don't think anyone should want a Living Legend system for Commoner, because it's a way for you to play these heroes as evergreen as possible, right? If you want to play Icelander, you don't have to worry about being, oh, is she at, 600 LL points? Am I going to need to, not buy into Icelander bling because I don't want to play her? Like, it still behooves you to just play a hero, whatever hero you want, whatever hero calls to you, you can play them in Commoner, and then you can just go about learning the format. But the downfall is that it is not, when it comes to being competitive in the format, you can play 2 heroes, Ira and whoever else kind of has some play into Ira at that moment. And that is kind of that's the trade-off. And so I feel like either Commoner is going to need a lot of work, or replacing Commoner with Silver Age is going to be the answer to Ira, because I don't believe Ira did very well in any of the Project Blue events that have occurred so far. Not that she wouldn't do well. I think she would do super great, but without the concept of things like Flick Flack, no Snapdragon Scalers, none of those things. There are a lot of cards that were removed from the pool for Ira for that concept. But at the end of the day, I'm sure somebody out there can break Ira. She's a really good hero. She's very consistent in what she does. And notably, with the addition of rares, you get the addition of more cards that have good on hits, especially when they come in for a breakpoint, such as Humble. You have Wreck Havoc, which is just like CNC at home. What else? Several of the really nice like generics that came from High Seas. I think it's just like a really, really powerful way to make decks, right? And I think the addition of rares is going to at least give some identities to some of these heroes that don't have one currently. But again, I think it's likely that it replaces Commoner. If it does happen, that sucks. And frankly, I hope that it's an easy transition for people who like these budget formats to move into Silver Age, because frankly, the issue I'm seeing now, which I can make a separate video on, is that some of these rares are being like bought out in mass, and they're like $3 for like a rare, which is kind of rough. But notably, you had the same issue in Commoner too, because if you wanted to play Ira, you needed to play Bittering Thorns. Bittering Thorns, before it got reprinted in the Ira Armory deck, was like $10 a copy. So it is what it is, I guess. But anywho, that's kind of my talking point for today. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion. I wanted to at least get this information out there and talk a little bit about it as we move into October, because it is truly something that I am curious about. I do really want to know whether or not a big change is going to happen to the ban list, or if certain heroes are going to be added in as heroes to be playable in the format. Are there certain things that are going to be added in for those heroes to allow them to be playable, such as Prism Advent of Thrones getting access to Figments? It would be a very, very interesting thing, and I'd be very curious to see exactly how it's set up. It could be a new format entirely, right? It could be something completely and utterly different that we don't know anything about, and it could just not be, a budget format in that scenario. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But until then, let me know what you think in the comments down below about the Silver Age takeover, the Sage takeover. Do you think that it is going to replace a format? Do you think it's going to just exists in its own lane and people are going to enjoy it just like they would anything else, I'd love to hear from you. And while you're down there, make sure to go ahead and like the video. You can subscribe to the channel as well if you have not already. We are hoping to get close to 3,000 subscribers towards the end of this year, so we're moving on up there. Thank you all so much for continuing to support the channel in every way that you do. And I hope you continue to have fun in the flesh and blood. And I will see all of you wonderful Ashwings in our next video.